listening to Trailer Rewind, a monthly conversation about movies you may have missed in theaters and are now available on streaming services. Every month we dig into the archives and view a film that Pete and Andy talked about in their trailer picks. JJ and I watch it and have a very spoilery conversation about it. Today we're looking at Cuban Fury. This was Pete's pick from April 4th, way back in 2014.
Wow.
And today is March 13th, 2018, and Cuban Fury is available on Amazon Prime at this time.
It's about time. 4 years.
Can't speak to how long it'll be there. I know a lot of these movies bounce around, but as of March 13th, 2018, it is available for you on Amazon Prime. Before we go any further, you should check out our ever-expanding back catalog, not only for this show, but our sibling shows over at thenextreel.com. And if you've stumbled upon us, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast app or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And whether you've just found us or you've been listening for a while, you can become part of our community as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. Gets you into our Discord group where there's always a fun conversation about films. There's been just a raging debate about Ready Player One going on, whether it's going to be a fun movie or it's going to be a flaming piece of garbage from Spielberg. So it's very interesting to see how things are splitting on the sides on that.
When was the last time you put flaming piece of garbage from Spielberg in one sentence together?
I don't think I have.
I don't either. So why is everybody so... I don't know. I'm very excited for that. But it's a great conversation over there on Discord.
It is. And I think a lot of it has to do with source material, concerns about source material, because it's, there we go. But in addition to that, you also get exclusive Patreon-only weekly Saturday matinee episodes, which is the new home of trailer picks and lists and lists and lists. If you've been listening to our lists, you will know that we have now pigeonholed Pete into he needs to include a Woody Allen movie every time on his list, which was quite challenging for him when we did vampire movies. So he couldn't fulfill his obligations on that one.
A Woody Allen movie every single time?
Well, Andy and I just, we're not huge Woody Allen fans. And so Pete kept always just wanting to figure out how to get whatever Midnight in Paris into a list. And so he finally did. And he said, great, you just do that for every list now. You find a Woody Allen movie because he releases, one a year? Plenty to choose from.
Sure.
So
but is that kind of like trying to get like a choice phrase into every show, like swamp radish, but put it in like context, right?
Exactly.
Woody Allen swamp radish movie thing. I don't know. I think that's funny.
So we've got him sort of stuck with that, and he failed. And I think he failed on the vampire. He did say he thought there was in Radio Days, like in the background, there was something. And then this past weekend, he just flat out forgot. But I forgive him because he was getting over some nasty cold or something like that. But for next time, that's what the actual story is behind Annie Hall, is that she's a vampire. No, then you get into theories. Yes, all the theories about the hidden subtext in Woody Allen movies.
Right.
We're spending too much time talking about Woody Allen. I'm not that big of a fan. All right. So this one. So Cuban Fury. So I went back and listened, and Pete said that this was his pick of hope because it was a Nick Frost film. So he was very excited about that. And the other thing that he really keyed in on was that it's written by John Brown. And that was exciting for him because John Brown had written several episodes of one of Pete's favorite shows, which was Misfits, which is a British show. I have not seen. I watched a couple episodes. It's about a group of probation workers that get superpowers. So if you think of like low class, you're doing community service, teens that are just that type, that who's going to get stuck doing community service, you're troublemakers, you're rabble rousers. And now that those people have been given superpowers. And if you think about the whole concept of with great power comes great responsibility, here are the people that are worst equipped to be given something that requires responsibility.
And Nick is associated with that. Oh, no.
That's John Brown.
John Brown
John Brown is the writer. So he was excited about what that sensibility may bring to this movie combined with Nick Frost. It was actually a concept idea from Nick Frost that John Brown wrote. So we've got those two minds working together to bring us Cuban Fury. This film just felt very different from other movies we've discussed. I sort of scrolled back to look at what we've discussed, and the closest thing I could find to a romantic comedy like this would be back in May 2016 when we talked about Comet. I don't know that I'd call Comet necessarily a romantic comedy because there was a lot of other things going on there, but it's probably the closest thing that we've done to a romantic comedy. So we're getting into territory that's, I think, more mainstream than a lot of the other stuff we've done. So I thought that may be an interesting starting point with this. We've got a film that's sort of in a known genre where there's certain expectations of what a romantic comedy does. And so I thought we'd start with, how well for you did this fulfill what your expectations were for a romantic comedy?
Well, now that's interesting that you put it in that category, because I didn't even really think of it as a romantic comedy when I was watching it. And I will say I'm not a huge fan of the romantic comedy genre. So that is interesting. I felt like it was a absurdist look at a clever, funny dance. It was almost like a situation comedy put into a film that did have the element of romance in it. Because I think, I guess, if I'm objective about it and I think about the story, yes, he went back to dancing for the girl, right? He went back to dancing. Nick Frost went back to dancing for Rashida Jones. But the thing that I found to be the more compelling storyline is how, really the narration at the beginning, when they're talking about that this was a kid who had talent, who had the fire. He had the corazón.
El corazón.
Which I don't... So it's Cuban. So this is the thing. So they speak with Castilian Spanish when they talk about heart,
yes.
Corazon. But it's cute. Is that really? I mean, maybe because they're in England, right? They're in England. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So maybe they picked up their Spanish from Spain. So they're saying, I don't know, but that was something that they said every time it was El Corazon. I was just thinking, wait a second. This is a different. I'm trying to understand the Spanish. No, but the point that I guess was that he had heart, he had fire, he had all these things, and I thought it was more of a sort of a guy coming back, maybe a fish out of water story, and then kind of like getting his mojo backstory. And it did involve a romantic tie-in, but honestly, nothing really happened with the romance until the end credits rolled, other than, the sort of, I guess, Silver Linings Playbook aspect of the big dance number. But I just think in general, I didn't feel like it was such a romantic comedy as much as it was a story about a guy who was going through this thing where he got bullied and he gave up his love, which was dance. So, so what about it made it super romantic for you?
So for me, I'm a fan of really good romantic comedies, like things like Notting Hill, that just really, solid character pieces. And there's some of the lighter ones that I will, that sort of like guilty pleasures. And so I'm looking for certain things. You've got the meet cute, they bump into each other, their little lanyards at work get entangled, and hers has, for whatever reason, has a typo that her name instead of Julia is Julio. So they have that Julio. So, you've got that little moment together with them that, Nick, he's falling for her. That's his boss. And it's his whole quest to get the girl. But of course, then there's his coworker, Chris O'Dowd, who is going to get in the way because he's, the ladies' man. So we've got that quest of.
Is that what he is? Do we call him a ladies' man?
Well, let's just say he thinks he's the ladies' man.
Wow.
We can just say he thinks he's the ladies' man.
A disgusting human being.
Yes. So you've got that sort of, I guess it is a bit of a twist on it, but you do have the boy seeking girl and some obstacles that get in the way and a misunderstanding. But I guess rather than something going wrong with their relationship to send them apart, you've got another person that's keeping them apart. And ultimately at the end, you've got everything comes together happily ever after in the end. But I do agree that, yes, the main thrust of the story really is about him and sort of getting back to the thing that sort of defines him, or as his sister tells him, the one thing that he's ever really been good at. and I think as we see the one thing that really brings him joy and sort of rediscovering that part of himself.
Now that was a great bit though. The one that you're bringing up there. I mean, when she tells him that's the one thing, and then he goes into the list. The list is hilarious and goes, I mean, honestly, it felt like a good Saturday Night Live sketch or something where he just keeps going down this list of kind of hilarious things to be good at. That's one of the things about this is that the pure comedy moments of this movie were really fun and were really funny. I actually liked it. I liked that part.
So now what, you're going to stop dancing?
I was only doing it for art.
Were you? So what, you're going to give it all up again? The only thing you're good at? Literally the only thing you've ever been good at that wasn't shit and totally pointless.
Oh, okay, fine. Here we go. Just off the top of my head. Quizzes. Carving Sunday roasts. The Rubik's Cube. The Rubik's Sphere. The Rubik's Snake. Flags of the world. Driving abroad. Famous dams. Identifying dogs by their silhouettes. You know? African money. I could go on.
You're wasting your life.
What do you know? You are 35 years old and you are working as a hula girl. Oh, sorry, no, hula woman. Oh,
I really connect with this because it is of a certain, it's clearly for a specific generation because there are so many references to the 80s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even with, his brother and sister, when they're kids, they've got their little phrase to get them going and, they bring that back later on of thunder, thunder, Thundercats. Oh, and there's just so much of that is that nostalgia factor that it's not just, I can identify with these characters because we're a similar age, but we've got those cultural touchstones that just,
it's a cute primer for Ready Player One.
Yeah. There you go. Exactly. It's going to get all your 80s out of the way.
Right.
So there's that part of it is the romantic comedy piece. And you've got, the whole part with his friends, and trying to he's got this hidden side of himself. They're not understanding why he's getting into dancing. He's doing it for the girl. So I guess it's not the stereotypical romantic comedy, but I guess in the context of everything else we've been talking about on Trailer Rewind, this seems so much more of a traditional and conventional film genre than everything else we talk about. I could say, this is something that, I guess, rather than, this is a hidden gem because it's not something that's going to come across your radar. I think this is one I'm just worried got overlooked because maybe of the distribution or whatnot. Because I think everybody, Nick Frost is a recognizable face. You've got Ian McShane, and Rashida Jones. You have recognizable faces. In a lot of other films, we may have some recognizable faces, but not always. And I just guess I felt this was more accessible to people, where this is something you could easily sit down with family on a weekend or on a Saturday afternoon. It's light and it's fun. That's my joy about this movie. I was pleasantly surprised with this because there's so many times that romantic comedy can just fall apart or become so cliche. And it did so many fresh things with the characters, their relationships with each other. Is a great cast, just a really different take on the story. Because so many times in these romantic comedies, it's like, he's the advertising. It's like everybody works in like advertising because it's like a job you can do
field.
You're creative. You're apparently making enough money that you can just do whatever. Like, hey, we're going out on the yacht for the weekend. So this was, different because he's, sort of like cubicle farm guy. He's working, not an exciting industry. He's a machinist. He's not your typical, romantic lead either. It's Nick Frost. He's a bit of a big guy. So it played with the genre so much and did it in fresh ways that I found it sort of invigoratingly enjoyable.
See, and I think it's a special movie too. I think it's one of those that you could possibly discount because you maybe have not heard of it, and you'll see the names in it, and you'll say, "Oh, this might be a toss-away movie that they got together and make." But it's actually a really, really good movie. It's a great stream. I mean, honestly, if you come across this in the stream and you just pick it, by chance, you're going to be very, very happy that you picked this movie because it's really fun and endearing and special. I will say, and I don't want to jump ahead a little bit, but you mentioned that this would be something fun for the family. I'll jump ahead to the part that I didn't like in the movie, and that's the Drew character, the Chris O'Dowd character. He's pretty raunchy.
Yes,
I mean,
I agree with you.
How would you feel
yes.
about with your daughter? Like in general, that was my concern. Is that in the movie's really light and special and fun, and then this guy comes in and he makes everything uncomfortable, which is what he's supposed to do. I mean, Chris O'Dowd does a great job of playing a terrible character, but it took me out of the movie because it was so grotesque at some points that I just didn't. Yes. I mean, I made my skin crawl and I was like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? So, how did you feel about that? Was there stuff in there that bothered you there too, or did you really think that you could share this with the whole family?
Yeah, this is the second time I've seen it.
He's such a crap.
Yes,
I don't know what else to say.
This is the second time I've seen it.
He made me so angry.
The first time I will say, the first time I watched it, yes, it was uncomfortable and shocking because I expect a typical romantic comedy to sort of toe that PG-13 line. This one's rated R. And yeah, I think it's definitely Drew and his raunchiness because he's just saying things that are just so offensive and crude. And normally I'd say, that's not necessary. You could cut that out. You don't need that. Why are you doing this? Making it so that you're going to make it awkward for me to sit down and watch this with either my kids or families over for Thanksgiving. This is not something that's going to be comfortable to watch because of that. But to me, it does contribute to the humor because I think it gets to his character of he's just so full of himself that he thinks he can get away with these things. And ultimately, I think he gets his comeuppance a bit in terms of his quest to get Julia. But yeah.
Have we ever talked about my Ben Stiller problem? Have we ever talked about that on the podcast? Are you familiar with that?
No. What is your Ben Stiller problem?
Ben Stiller, I love Ben Stiller. I think he's fantastic. But I really like movies where he plays a character. I really like Zoolander and movies like that. I have a lot of difficulty with the movies where he plays an everyman and he's constantly beat up in more and more entertaining and creative ways. So I totally understand where you're saying this about Chris O'Dowd, but I apply the Ben Stiller problem to this in that when he's being so cruel and so graphically cruel to Bruce, to Nick Frost, I just put myself in the Nick Frost character and I'm just like, I can't get to funny. It's so awkward and so uncomfortable that I just feel terrible for Bruce. So I think most people can handle movies like Meet the Parents. I can't do it because I just want him so much to just have a fair shake at life. And this character, and in this movie, it's not about the, sort of the forces of life swirling around Bruce that are making things bad. It for the most part, as an adult, it's this guy who's potentially the adult incarnation of the bullies that took him out of dancing in the first place. But, which is kind of clever when you think about the story, but it's so intense. And it was just so much for me. I can see why most people might be able to just take that lightly and just be like, ha ha ha, he's a silly, funny bully thing. But for me, I was just like, I wanted to stick up for Bruce constantly. And so it was really tough. It took me out of the movie because he was so mean and cruel and gross. Oh, so gross.
Okay. So, well, yes. So in your identification with Bruce,
yeah,
so there's a point where he decides to get back, to put the tiny shoes back on and go back and learn some salsa. And he tracks down his former mentor, Ron Parfit, played by Ian McShane. And we've got from the whole sort of opening prologue piece that shows us, that Bruce was this superstar. They made it all the way to nationals. And so now later on, he still has this confidence that, yeah, I'm still good at this. And he walks in to the studio and Ron is just like, yeah, he puts him in a really awkward and embarrassing situation, says, oh, you think you're all that? And pairs him up with the current champion. And to me, that was just this humiliating moment for Bruce.
Yes.
Did that have a similar impact on you in terms of your emotional, connection with Bruce there?
That's a really good question. Not as much. I'm going to say not as much because I recognize that whole scene, especially when he first meets Bijan. And he kind of treats him poorly because of his he walked into it overblown. And we see that character go through his, I guess, some sort of arc from being overblown to then becoming humble and then working his way back. So we get that whole thing for Bruce. So in that moment, no, because I wanted him to start with the fundamentals or, begin the romantic comedy montage of salsa dancing, which I don't know that they actually did in this film, but
there is a training montage. Arms of an eagle.
With Ron later on. Yeah. That's
yes,
great.
Yes.
Yeah. Arms of an eagle. What did he call him? He didn't call him an eagle. He called him another bird. There was lots of great little clever things like that in this movie, but, so not so much in that instant, but of course there's no arc for Drew. Drew's he's a crap. He's a crap throughout the movie. Let's cast Chris O'Dowd and just make him a crap.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's tough too because he's kind of a likable guy.
Yeah.
That's one of the weird things too. I was conflicted in that because, I mean, you think about him in Bridesmaids and stuff, and he plays the reverse role in movies like that. So he was a great movie for him, but he was not a likable character in any way.
No, I think that's credit to him, because we recently talked about him on the film board in Molly's Game.
Yes.
As a character who's just, this really likable guy and, this the lovable drunk whose first sentence always sounds like the Raymond Chandler novel title this really sweet guy. Yeah. And here Drew is just, he's the worst. He's a piece of crap that just is. Yeah, I think you're right. He embodies every bully that anybody ever had.
And that's where this story gets really creative. I mean, honestly, there are a lot of neat pieces to this story, and the things that in a poorly executed romantic comedy, you may feel like you're being railroaded into the story, where they're using analog tapes and making a mixtape, and he's putting kind of a hidden message on the inside of the inlay. This kind of stuff, these are things where you'd feel like, hey, that's kind of Deus Ex Machina, but it was executed in such a clever, light way in this story that I actually felt it was just good writing. I never at any point in the film felt like, oh, they're setting me up, because unless it was Drew, who was clearly like a terrible foil at every turn, everything else was kind of done in a clever, nice, sort of uplifting way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I didn't see the plot and story being moved and see the pieces at work, because it's sort of a throwaway thing of, Bruce tries to do something nice for Julia. He makes her the mixtape, which was nice to see somebody put together old school mixtape, like get the record, get it going, get the song, record. Then, just the amount of time, I think, it goes into that process, whereas nowadays it's like, oh, here, I'll make you a playlist. It takes me 5 seconds on Spotify. It shows that commitment to the effort he put in. And then she even comments, later on about...
kids are never going to understand that, Steve.
No, I know.
Kids are never going to know what you're talking about, but I love it because I lived that life too.
Then even the lettering, of like each song, on just the little bits of flair and everything on
quality inlay.
Yes,
time,
exactly.
Effort.
So, but the fact is, he slips that into her purse. Drew sees it. Gets the credit for the tape and everything, thinking that's going to be his in with Julia. And I think, okay, that's just one more thing of how Drew is continually undermining Bruce. But then at the end, when she takes the tape out and unfolds the inlay and sees that it's from Bruce, I was like, oh, okay, there was another function to that. That wasn't telegraphed for me that was going to be the reveal of, oh, Bruce is the guy. Bruce is the guy that, she should be with. That,
but I mean,
he understands
this movie came out in 2014. Even in 2014, to have an analog tape player in your car, that's pretty. That's pretty telegraphed. There's a reason why that's happening for sure.
Yeah, I guess there is. Yeah, so the cast I think works really well together. I think everybody's bringing great game to this. Ian McShane as Ron is just, they give him such weird quirks. The whole the board game thing where they're playing, and it's the trivia questions, and then it's like, oh, that one's purple. You've got to.
They did that to bring in the Pacino the Pacino impression. Which
you got to do the impression,
Cuban, and I mean that's the thing. Yes. Like in a lesser movie, we would have hated these things. We'd have been like, oh, of course they're playing board. Why would they be playing board games? It's because they're setting up these great things. Say hello to my little friend. Like they did it, and it led us through the movie. It was well done.
You're sounding like you really enjoyed this one. Is that what you're telling me?
I did. And, one of the people that we want to talk about, too, is Olivia Colman. She played the sister.
Oh, yes.
So now we know her from Lobster in Trailer. We rewind.
Oh, that's right.
She was the big bad lady in Lobster. How great was it to see her in a different kind of role? And, honestly, she was my favorite character in the whole movie because she was, she had a real sort of very straightforward, stereotypical personality, but she delivered it well. And we were on this journey with Bruce the whole way. And, you think about his sister. She performed with him too when he was a kid. He left her at the Nationals to perform, by himself. So it was really nice to be able to cheer for her too.
Oh yeah. That was, I think I was really torn at the end because when we get to the big show and the big competition, it's Bruce and his sister, Sam. It's the two of them working their way through all of the, elimination rounds to get to like the semifinals there. Now, I guess the one The one little issue I do have with the film is so much of the, I think it's like the last half hour of this film all takes place like in several hours. So we go from Bruce showing up at Julia's apartment, to invite her with him, which is supposed to be the business dinner celebrating this thing. And Drew hasn't invited Bruce or Helen. It's his attempt to, get with Julia. So Bruce leaves. Then he decides, no, I'm going to go to this salsa competition. He goes to the salsa competition, but then then he leaves. There's so many things going on. I don't know how either they're in a weird time warp or just the neighborhood is so small that he can clearly get from Julia's apartment to home to like the golf driving range and then back to the salsa competition, all while everything's happening.
I forgot about the golf driving range in there. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that they pack in there.
But that's that key moment where Sam convinces him like, hey, you've got to do this. Why are you here? You've got to go and do the one thing that you love. And there's just so much. And then, that gives Julia time to discover who really made the mixtape and get changed and all done up to show up for the
terrible sexual harasser assaulting person in her house.
Yes. So that's the one thing is that it seems like because as I was watching the second time, he mentioned like, oh, that's tonight. And I thought, oh my gosh, all these things have to happen. Like how late does this competition go? Maybe it is like ending at 2 or 3 a.m. They're going that late. I don't know. Because I thought, how many elimination rounds did they go through, before they get to the finals? So there is a time issue, but I'm willing to let that go because I just have so much fun. And the second time through, I have to say, I fell in love even more with the character of Bijan and all his love for all things 80s.
Yeah.
At first, I wasn't sure what his function was. And then I realized, no, he's the mentor for Bruce, because the first time they're going to go out and Bruce is wearing what he's wearing, he's like, oh no, you cannot go out like this. You've got to shave your chest. You've got to get the tanning stuff on. He gives him his little makeover to be, what he needs to be. They go through the whole thing of like, you've got to wear the linen pants and the silk shirt and, these socks because you don't want to get blisters. Who likes blisters? Pilgrims. Apparently pilgrims like blisters. But, so that whole thing and his, obsession with Fanta, or what is it? It's distilled Fanta. And we're just like,
so weird.
Yeah. They don't make distilled Fanta. He's like, yeah, you open it, you leave it on the balcony for 2 days, and then it's distilled Fanta. So.
Oh yeah, and I don't think he's saying distilled. I think he's saying still.
Oh, still Fanta. Yes,
he just lets it go flat.
Yes, there
That's
we go.
That's what he does.
But I just love that character even more this time around because I thought he's just a great comic relief. And this one, so yeah, and then we also mentioned Rory Kinnear as. Bruce's friend Gary, who stumbles upon, Bruce and Bajana thinks there's something suspicious going on at bath time. But yeah, there's just, I think all these little bit pieces, to me, it's one where there's enough story, enough character that there's some variety to it that just keeps me moving along nicely.
There was only one bit that didn't hit for me, and that's when Drew and Bruce have their knockdown, drag-out dance war in the parking garage for the love of Julia. And the reason why I didn't like that is because we hadn't established yet that Drew was actually a dancer. We just had established that he was a crap. So for them to like do that, and it kind of took like a moment, it actually kind of felt like it was a parallel universe in the film. I kind of compare it to like in the Anchorman movies where you have the TV news crews having their brawl. Like that's how it felt, but that's not how it was set up nor delivered. So that part really took me out of the film. Maybe it was, what would we say, maybe 3 or 4 minutes long, maybe not even that long, but it was a good amount of time, and it was long enough for me to sit in the moment and go, what's happening here? Why are we doing this? And I didn't find it particularly funny either. So that was a difficult part because I feel like they were trying to set that up as either a big emotional crisis or a big turning point in the movie. And it ended up just feeling like something that was kind of nonsensical and not there for any particular reason. I feel like you actually could have probably taken that part out of the movie and very little would have changed for me. So that particular scene was really confusing for me when I look at the whole movie.
In terms of Bruce's arc, I think the reason it's in there is to give us a bigger defeat when he shows up at Julia's apartment, because he's just battled Drew basically for the right to, she's going to pick me. And, Drew's like, fine, if you win, I'll back off. And he's not anyway,
Right.
but I
he's
think
lying,
it's,
like he always does, because he's a
like he
crap.
always does. So it gives Bruce that confidence so that then when he goes there and sees, Drew there in the background without
Pantsless.
pants. Yes. Which was, not pleasant to see at all. That it's a greater, disappointment and fall for him, because at his highest moment now, there is the big fall. And I think that's the reason that I can point to, because I do agree. Tonally, it doesn't really fit in. It seems like it was maybe like this clever idea of like, hey, this would be fun to do. Yes, but it just doesn't really fit. But that's the rationale. I can see where it does something for Bruce's character. Plus, you do get the, nice little, cameo from Simon Pegg there in the parking lot.
Right, exactly.
As he's driving through.
Connected to the production family. That's a good.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I can see that. And I think maybe the other piece is, if you're going to name a movie Cuban Fury and it's about salsa dancing, you've got to have a dance. You've got to have dance, appearing regularly throughout. And it had been a while since a dance sequence, so we got a really
and it's
big
a Fury, so you got to have a dance fight in some way or another.
A dance fight, a very acrobatic dance fight.
Exactly. Destroy a car a little bit. When you're at it too.
I never thought about that, about, how destructive it would actually be to jump up on top of somebody's car.
Very destructive.
And dance. And it's you don't want to dance on her car. So, okay. So overall, I think we're in agreement that this was an enjoyable one.
Yes.
It's got a few issues. I'm not going to rank it as like one of my top romantic comedies of all time, but I think it's fresh and surprising and fun, with a little bit of crudeness that could be a little off-putting for some people.
Yep.
So when I think about this, when we come back to who are you going to recommend this to? What, we spent so much time with like dark, disturbing movies. So it's like, you're going to bring this one, people are going to be like, what? But yeah, where do you, as someone that's not a huge fan of the romantic comedy, is this a movie you're going to recommend to people? And what would you say, if you like this type of thing, this might be right up your alley?
I do recognize that most people aren't as sensitive about the crude stuff as I am. So that in general, I'm going to recommend it to more people than not. I would just be concerned with people who wanted to make it a family film, like we talked about. But I will say, so you and I both know that I drive Lyft and Uber at night sometimes to do this. So last night, I watched the movie on Sunday night. Last night, I drove a woman home from the Portland airport, who was from Argentina but was coming back from LA, where she had spent 4 nights salsa dancing in different places in Los Angeles.
Awesome.
And I immediately brought up this film. So when I think about it, who am I going to recommend it to? People who really dug like Strictly Ballroom, movies that were about dancing, movies that are funny and clever and have that sort of, it's a special thing about music and what music does to you and your creative passion, if that's something that's there. And that's another reason why I asked about your kids too, because I know that your kids are involved in dance. So it would be something that you would definitely want to show them if you were comfortable doing so. Is there a different kind of person that you'd recommend the movie to?
No, and I can say, I think it was the first time we watched it. I think my younger daughter, who is the dancer, she was sick with the flu or it was something, and her whole sleep schedule is off, and it was like 8:30 on like a Friday, and she was like up, and I was like, you know what? You just need something fun and light. And I put this on, and I was like, I'm going to be okay with the crudeness, because I'm hoping she's got enough, antihistamine stuff in her that she's a little hazy, may not remember, but I know she's going to laugh and enjoy the dance parts of it. And she did. And because she is my sort of gore horror fan, somewhat, she's, had seen Shaun of the Dead. So,
right.
The whole Nick Frost thing with that one as well. So I'm comfortable with that, because they're teenagers. I'm in a place where I know she's hearing this or worse at school probably regularly. So I'm not gonna live in be oblivious to that. So this is one where
it could be a tool. You could find the Chris O'Dowd Drews that are plaguing your daughter's middle school or high school. Reveal some of the real crap stuff that's going on.
The real craps that are out there. Yes, exactly. These are the guys to stay away from. Or as he says, what is it? You're the guy that the nice girls go to talk to about guys like me.
Oh, to get advice about guys like me.
You get advice about guys like me.
Such a terrible line. Oh, just goes to the heart of me and Bruce.
So yeah, I think just being sensitive to people that may be a little put off by the crudeness, but yeah, I'd say this is one that if I know them really well, know their sense of humor, I'm going to easily recommend this as something fun to see. So yeah. Yep. So how about we talk about where it fell on our lists and how we've ranked it? Because this is romantic comedies are always an interesting one because they don't have a lot of substance to them. So in terms of, weightiness or importance, it sort of will always struggle in those. But I often find rewatchability is also another factor in ranking something high because I know, this is highly rated because I'll watch it, 3 times within a year because I just want something light and fun and funny. So these are always a challenge for me to rate and rank.
Yeah, and it was for me too. And I mean, my middle road. So Flickchart starts with the middle road being your movie in the middle. That's where you basically create a toggle for whether it's going to be in your top half or bottom half as it's a tournament. And my movie that's in the middle for me is True Romance, which is a really tough film to rate against things. And to have True Romance against Cuban Fury was super tough. So Cuban Fury ends up in my bottom half, but ends up next to some movies that I really like that are in my bottom half, even though it feels terribly low. The number where it is on my Flickchart is 127 out of 169. It's just below Odd Thomas, which is another Trailer Rewind movie that we've done here, and just above Murder on the Orient Express, which is a show that we did for the Film Board last November. I find it to be a wonderful movie, and I think, definitely, I think you make a good point about rewatchability. This is a movie that's going to be super easy to watch again, especially if, you have someone that you just want to bring some light to their life, and it's a good movie for that. But unfortunately, because of its comparing it to all these other movies that just are not fair. They're Flickchart hate crimes, but it ended up in that lower slot for me.
I had the same problem where it hit something solid sort of at the middle. Right now, my middle break point there is Brooklyn, the Saoirse Ronan film from a couple years ago. And that one, again, a fun movie, but it had some drama to it that just I couldn't get past that with this one because, it's light and silly, and there are a few things I just couldn't say better than Brooklyn, but it did hover sort of in that top half and ended at 158 of 306. And that puts it in a really, really weird spot. It puts it just below Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, the Elizabeth Olsen one where she's been abducted by a cult. And then just above the very strange Netflix film, I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which is just a really disturbing dark comedy. So it fell in this really weird spot. Weird. So, but it's right there. I feel it's in a good place. It's in the, I think it's at 48%. So just below the halfway point, which I feel good about it. And then over on Letterboxd, I ended up at 3 stars. I feel it's a really solid 3-star, maybe leaning towards 3.5, but I'd say I'm confident that I just say this is solid 3, not going to be for everybody, not great, but still thoroughly enjoyable. You and I are the same on that. It's 3.25 for me, just like you're talking about, and a solid 3 and a like from me on that. Okay. Well, I'm excited. We had a fun one. We've had some darkness and everything. So I'm glad we've got something light. It's like springtime is around the corner. It seemed like perfect timing for this. Get some spring in our step. Get some spring in our step. So, well, we say here when the movie ends, the conversation begins, and I really enjoyed talking with you about Cuban Fury. I'm glad you'd enjoyed it as much as you did, but it's time to start another movie. So what have you got coming up on your list? What are you? Well, I'm not sure exactly. I've got my theater life and I've got my home life in terms of movies, and I really hope to catch A Wrinkle in Time because it just came out last weekend. But I don't know that I'm going to see that before Ready Player One, and that's the next movie for us on the film board. That's the last weekend in March, and I am super geeked about Ready Player One because I loved the book. Fully understanding the criticisms that are coming out about it in the sort of nostalgia
porn. People talk about it as nostalgia porn, and how it may not be as deep a book, but it was such a page turner for me, and it was so fun that the fact that Spielberg's attached to it, I think it's going to make for a great movie and for a great podcast for us to talk about as well. So that's what I'm going to see in the theater. And then what I got from the library, I got Battle of the Sexes, which is about Billie Jean King and the tennis match that she played in, I think it was in the 70s. Is that right? And then I found a blank spot. Someone had recommended Harold and Maude to me as kind of like an original comedy kind of thing. So I've got those two that I'm kind of watching at home. What are you? What's on your slate?
I'm so jealous. You get to see Harold and Maude for the first time.
Yeah.
There's some movies like that first time experience of like discovering something. It can be just, I'm like, I never get that experience again. Right. And Battle of the Sexes, I did see that in theaters, and it's all right.
Yeah.
It didn't give me everything, but I think it's enjoyable. I think the performances from Steve Carell and Emma Stone really solid.
Transformational. Transformational for sure.
I'm still trying to get out. There's some stuff out in the theater. I did get a chance just on Sunday. I did get out to see Annihilation. So I was really thrilled to see that on the big screen. Just really messed with my head on that one at the end, because I heard it was this intellectual sci-fi thing, and we're moving along through the story. And I thought, okay, there's unusual things, but nothing that was really cerebral. And then we get to the end and just, wow, there was a lot to digest that I'm still sort of sorting through exactly what happens and what that means and what this film is attempting to say, possibly.
Not ready to see that movie. I've spoiled myself on it, and I know that it's not for me.
Okay. Wrinkle in Time is on my list. Do want to maybe take the kids out to see that. And if I have time, if I can get out to sort of the smaller arts theater, Thoroughbreds is playing. That just came out last weekend. And that was one of my trailer picks from the Saturday matinee. And that is, sort of a dark teen comedy that just is sort of right where I'm living right now, because I've got two teenagers, and it's something that, I'm sort of living in that world of Lady Bird with drama and anxiety and fun times, and you've got to laugh at the tragedy sometimes. So something I may take my older daughter to go see is sort of like, last couple films before she heads off to college in the summer. Right. But I am also very much looking forward to Ready Player One after reading some of the reviews coming out of South by Southwest. That I think that this. There's no need for the doubt of the quality of this film. So I'm very much looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I agree.
Listeners, we do appreciate you. And if you haven't already, give us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps other film fans discover us. And we hope you will help them discover us, because there's nothing more thrilling than discovering a group of like-minded fans online. It's like finding a new home, or maybe a new dance school where you can embrace El Corazon. Once you've found us, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter for sort of film geekery posts during the week. Or even better, you can help us by supporting us as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. But the best thing you can do is go watch a movie with a friend and sit down and have a conversation about it. And if it's one that's been discussed by us on any of our shows, let us know. We love hearing from you.
Hondo.